So before I start, I need to tell you a bit about using the stencils and cleaning them. And because I'm quite a lazy person, I've left yesterday's stencils uncleaned, and I was preparing for this video, so I was using the Poppy, and of course I haven't cleaned up after me. So the main thing to do is to get your stencils clean. The best thing to do is to clean them immediately after you've finished them, because this goo can slightly dry on the surface of your stencil, and it's very easy to clean. You just use alcohol. I think this is 96% cleaning alcohol, or you can get it from your chemist as surgical spirit, and basically just carefully rub around your stencil, especially if you have pointy bits like here, and particularly on the leaf of the poppy. You have to be very careful not to pick at those, because they can bend back. So to prolong the life of your stencil, be very careful with all those little sticking out bits. Dab at it more than rubbing it, and it'll keep very clean. Now the poppy is the one of the set so far that is made of a slightly different material. So just because I needed the petal to be particularly fine, this is a really, really fine stencil, but the leaves are in a slightly thicker material, and some of the flowers that you have are in a card material. The first thing to do with the card material ones is to treat them with baby oil, and that protects them and helps your polymer clay glue not to stick quite as hard to the stencil, because the stencil will absorb the oils in the polymer clay if you don't pre-treat it. So when you first buy your pack, so let's give you an example, the dahlia one. When you first buy your pack, I'll just pick up my tissue. When you first buy your pack, just rub them all over with baby oil. It's not something that you have to do, but it will protect your stencils for a lot longer. But as I say, the poppy one's a different material, which already contains a slight oil-based material. So, right, so when you're ready to go, you simply make a mix, and with a poppy one, this is a goo mix. You'll find the instructions for making goo earlier on YouTube, and I've used it for printing other things like I've used it in a stencil for some brickwork, which you can see earlier as well. So all you do is get a mix that's quite thick. So that's to say it's not going to run off your spatula. You'll need a spatula like this to use it on the stencil, and the very best thing to do is to put a small amount on your tile, because between runs you're going to rub the excess onto the tile anyway, so you might as well have it on the tile to start off with. Just be careful not to get it all over your clothes, of course. So when you're setting up, put an apron on or something, and have a tissue and some clean-up alcohol to hand. And this is really simple. You just take a little bit of the goo, as I call it, onto your spatula and put a line of it down between the writing here and the flower parts there. And then you simply draw the spatula up over the flower parts. And then when you scrape it off, just get rid of the excess there, because you don't want too much. You've got to hold this firmly so it doesn't move. Actually, it did move slightly there, but I've managed to just rescue it. So the firmer you can hold it, the better. I did think initially about using tape to tape these down, but it's so long-winded. You're better off doing it this way, and then if you're not happy with it, you can scrape it up afterwards and start again. It's much, much quicker to do this way. So as soon as you've gone over it, you can go over it 2 or 3 times if you're not happy. With this one, I do want to be particularly fine. So I'm going over it several times to make sure it's nice and thinly distributed. Then you simply pick that up I'm clearing up the excess mostly because I just want to save the material. I don't want to waste it. But you can leave it there and scrape it up when it's baked. And then just go again as many times as you like. And in the poppy set there's a small petal and a larger petal, but here I'm using the smaller petal. If you want to, you can use them both on the same tray. Let me show you what happens if you put too much on. I'll just put too much on. You'll get a much thicker result. But for poppies, this isn't necessarily a good thing. So it'll come out a bit gloopy. You don't want that. So if you don't want it, if you look at it and it's not right, don't try and rescue it. Just simply scrape it up like that and go again. Obviously, I don't need that much on there, so I'll scrape some off. Mind out that you don't get anything into your clay, because what happens is if you get a stray bead or something, because you've been working with beads, because that's something we do with this technique, is work with beads. If you get a stray bead in, it'll just scrape across your picture and damage it. So just watch out for stray bits of grit or beads or anything. There you go. So you can choose the depth of your colour. Now the leaf is the same, only we've printed, this is a slightly damaged one, that's why I'm using it. We've printed these ones the wrong way up so that you don't catch all these little spikes. As I say, do be careful with these little spikes. Your stencil won't last indefinitely and it'll damage sooner the more careless you are with the spikes. Now somewhere I've got a green mix, yes. So I'll just show you doing the green mix. Normally I would use one tile for one time. Oh, it's worth me mentioning as well that I'm using a semi-matte tile. This is quite matte. It's an ordinary 6-inch tile, but it's got a matte rather than a shiny coating. The reason for that is to minimise the shine on the back of your petals and leaves. You'll always get a bit of shine, but it's not quite so bad if you use the matte one. So this is a slightly deeper print. You put a slightly greater amount of material through this one. And as I've said before, you can vary the quantity by how much you actually spread over it. If you see on that side I've put on quite thickly and on that side quite thinly. Your mix does need to be reasonably opaque because you're printing it quite thin, so don't make a very, very thin mix of colour unless you want a very, very delicate colour. This is quite delicate. I've deliberately made this quite delicate and I've made it less opaque, but the leaf bit wants to be reasonably opaque. Okay, so now we'll move on to assembly. So the first thing, oh no, I've forgotten to tell you something about this. I'll go back. One of the things that I do in order to make it easier to attach the stalks to these is that I add beads to the back. And these are just a very small, fairly matte, delicate coloured beads. So I've chosen green here, but any of the delicate subtle colours will do. And I simply pick up a bead with a cocktail stick, dip it in a bit more goo because it won't stick otherwise, and press it onto there, onto the middle of the flower, and then let it go. If you find difficulty releasing it, just pick it up much more delicately. And you add that to, well, approximately half of your beads, because the other half will be the secondary petals. So those bake on to the flower with the beads attached to them. And they don't always stay attached, so you have to vary the quantity of of the goo that you add to the back of them to make sure that they attach good and firmly, and sometimes they don't. You can get beads of an even finer quality, but I'll show you that on some of the other flowers. So here's the baked ones that I made earlier, and as you can see the beads are stuck and they're baked onto the surface. What you need now is a single-sided blade to remove the little flowers. You can, if you want, just got to go and get the scissors again, I've forgotten them. You can, if you want, leave these on the surface and put the stems in, which are about 5 centimetres long, and rebake on the board. But for speed, I'm going to show you the next process without baking in between. So all I've done here is I've taken a small piece of flower wire, I've dipped it in some polymer clay glue, I've put a lot on there so you can see, and then just stuck it inside the bead on the back of a flower. As I say, you can leave that on the board, you can do a lot of them, leave them on the board and bake them again and then go on to the next process. But for me, at the moment, I shall show you the next process from here. So then you take that off the board and you need another petal of the same size. I'm using the larger ones so you can see better. And then you'll take a little bit more of the red goo on the end of a cocktail stick, press it into the middle of the flower. I'm hoping this one's stuck on well, because otherwise it's not stuck on. Of course, this is the problem with it not being stuck yet, that it's a bit wobbly. So put a generous amount of the liquid into the middle of the petal, then pick up another petal. The goo that's on the cocktail stick should help you to do that, and put it, and make sure that you put it shiny side down, because there will be a shinier side. Put it across the top, that is to say, where the petals indent, do the next one the opposite to the first one, so the petals indent in a different position, and press down a little, and you'll find when that's properly cooked that will just raise that second petal up a little bit. But because I haven't cooked it first, it's not going to raise as dramatically, because I can't really press it down very hard. Then I take a little bit of black goo and pop it in the middle there. Now if you want to be all artistic, you can get a paintbrush, and you can, if you want those sort of poppies that have the black bit in the middle, you can paint on the little stains that go around the side. There's some that have 4 little black pieces in the middle, but I just want to do that. The other thing that you can add, if you wish, is a little bit of green around the edges of that, as if it's got those little pistils coming out. You can use that railway modelling scenic material to do that, but I'm just going to do this simply just to show you. Right, the next thing you need to do is to add the leaves. As you saw earlier, I printed the leaves onto the tile, then I baked the leaves onto the tile as well. Here's another set that I did earlier, and you can choose a nice light coloured leaf, because it depends how thickly you've printed the material on as to how light your leaf will be. So I want to take a little fairly light one, and I don't need all of it, I just need most of it, because I just want to attach some to the back of the flower first. So I'll take a cocktail stick again. Once again, you need a clean cocktail stick, because you don't want red or black on it, you want some green. So I'll just dip that into the green. Add a little goo to the back of this leaf, and just attach this to the back of the flower, like that. And then I'll add other leaves down the stem. So once again, a little bit of glue, and I'll put some onto the stem there. Pick up another leaf and add that to the stem. And then you can add 2 or 3, it's up to you. Then you'll put your leaf, your flower and leaf back onto a tile and bake it like that. And when it comes out, you can trim up any extra bits that are sticking out from the leaves. And that's basically it.